there, fellow Determinites. This is Miss History coming to you from a juicy cornfield. Today, I'm bringing you another Parry This video focused on women of history. Joan of Arc will be our topic today. To start it off, Joan was a peasant girl born January 6, 1412, in Domrémy, France. She was the daughter of poor tenant farmers, Jacques d'Arc and his wife, Isabelle Romée. Joan was not taught to read or write, but her pious mother instilled in her a deep love for the Catholic Church and its teachings. Joan never ventured far from home, but she enjoyed taking care of the animals and became quite the seamstress. In 1415, King Henry V of England invaded northern France. After delivering a devastating defeat to French forces, England gained the support of the Burgundians in France. The 1420 Treaty of Troyes granted the French throne to Henry V as regent for the insane King Charles VI. Henry would then inherit the throne after Charles's death. However, in 1422, both Henry and Charles died within a couple of months, leaving Henry's infant son as king of both realms. The French supporters of Charles's son, the future Charles VII, sensed an opportunity to return the crown to a French monarch. At this point, Joan had turned 13 and started hearing strange voices that she believed came from God. She claimed to have heard the voices of Saint Michael, Saint Catherine of Alexandria, and Saint Margaret of Antioch, all of which had similar messages: to save France by expelling its enemies, and to install Dauphin Charles as France's rightful king. As part of her divine mission, she took a vow of chastity. Her father tried to arrange a marriage for her, but she successfully convinced the court that she shouldn't be forced into that marriage. In May 1428, Joan traveled to Vaucouleurs, a nearby stronghold of people who were loyal to Charles. Initially, she was rejected by the captain of the garrison, Robert de Baudricourt, but she never gave up. She then came back to demand to see Charles, surrounded by a small band of followers who believed in her claims of being the virgin who was destined to save France. Finally, he relented and provided an escort to visit the Dauphin. Afterwards, Joan proceeded to chop off her hair and dress in men's clothing to make the 11-day journey across enemy territory to Chinon, the site of the prince's palace. Joan went at once to the castle of Dauphin Charles, who was initially uncertain whether to receive her. Against the advice of most of his counselors and generals, Charles granted her an audience. As a test, Charles hid himself among his courtiers, but Joan quickly detected him. She told him that she wished to go to battle against the English. Then she asked Charles to give her an army to lead to Orléans. Joan then promised Charles that she would see him crowned king at Reims, the traditional site of French royal inductions. Finally, he granted her an army. Joan had her banner painted with the image of Christ in judgment on one side, and the other side bearing the name of Jesus. When the question of a sword was brought up, she declared that it would be found in the church of Saint Catherine de Alexandria. One was actually found there, under the ground behind the altar. Joan set off for Orléans in March 1429, dressed in all white armor, while riding a white horse. After sending off a defiant letter to the enemy, Joan led several French assaults against them. In a series of battles between May 4th and May 7th, 1429, the French troops took control of the English fortifications. On the evening of May 4th, when Joan was resting, she suddenly sprang up, troubled, and announced that she must go attack the English. She armed herself, and she hurried to the English fort east of the city, where she discovered an engagement was already taking place. Her arrival roused the retreating Frenchmen, and they took control of that fort. The next day, Joan addressed another letter of defiance to the English. On the morning of May 6th, she crossed to the south bank of the river and advanced to another fort in order to defend a stronger position nearby. But Joan and the French commander, L'Iha, attacked them and took it by storm. Very early on May 7th, the French advanced against the fort of Les Tourelles. Joan was wounded, but later returned to the front to encourage a final assault. By mid-June, the French had routed the English, and in doing so, they were considered invincible. Although it appeared that Charles had accepted Joan's mission, he did not display full trust in her judgment or advice. After the victory at Orléans, she kept encouraging Charles to hurry to Reims to be crowned king, but he and his advisers were more cautious. However, Charles and his procession finally entered Reims, and he was crowned King Charles VII on July 18, 1429. Joan was right there by his side, occupying a visible place at the ceremonies. Then Joan argued that the French should press their advantage with an attempt to retake Paris. But Charles wavered. Even as his favorite in court, George de la Tremoille, warned him that Joan was becoming too powerful. The Anglo-Burgundians were able to fortify their positions in Paris, and turned back an attack led by Joan in September. In the spring of 1430, the king ordered Joan to confront a Burgundian assault on Compiègne. In her effort to defend the town and its inhabitants, she was thrown from her horse and was left outside the town's gates as they closed. The Burgundians held her captive for several months, negotiating with the English, who saw her as a valuable propaganda prize. Then brought her to the castle of Brouville, occupied by the English commander at Rouen, in exchange for 10,000 francs. In the trial that followed, Joan was ordered to answer to about 70 charges against her, including witchcraft, heresy, and dressing like a man. The Anglo-Burgundians were aiming to get rid of the young leader, as well as discredit Charles, who owed his coronation to Joan. In attempting to distance himself from an accused heretic and witch, the French king made no attempt to negotiate Joan's release. In May 1431, after a year in captivity and under the threat of death, Joan relented and signed a confession denying that she had ever received divine guidance. Several days later, however, she defied orders again and began dressing in men's clothes, and the authorities pronounced her death sentence. On the morning of May 30th, Joan, at the age of 19, was taken to the old marketplace of Rouen and burned at the stake before an estimated crowd of 10,000 people. Her fame only increased after her death. Then 20 years later, a new trial was ordered by King Charles VII to clear her name. In 1909, Joan of Arc was beatified in the famous Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris by Pope Pius X. There is a statue inside the cathedral that pays tribute to her legacy. Long before Pope Benedict XV canonized her in 1920, Joan of Arc had attained mythic stature and inspiring numerous works of art and literature over the centuries and becoming the patron saint of France. Well, that wraps it up for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Miss History, signing off from that juicy cornfield. So tune in next time on DTG Productions for another Women of History tidbit.